You walk into a forest and the birds go silent. A deer freezes, stares, and vanishes into the trees before you take another step. A crow on a fence post watches you from 50 meters away, then lifts off the moment you get too close, as if it calculated the exact distance where you become dangerous. You didn't do anything. You didn't shout or run or raise your hand. You simply existed, and that was enough. Why are animals so afraid of you? Most people assume it's instinct, that animals are just wary of anything large, that it's a simple survival reflex hardwired into their nervous systems. But that answer falls apart the moment you look closely, because animals are not afraid of everything large. An elephant doesn't flee from a buffalo. A gazelle doesn't panic at the sight of a giraffe. They calibrate, they assess. And when it comes to humans, the response is something different entirely, something older, something stranger. The fear animals feel around you isn't generic. It's specific. It's been shaped over hundreds of thousands of years. And understanding it reveals something deeply uncomfortable about what your species actually is. In 2019, a team of researchers led by Liana Zanet at Western University published a landmark study. They played recordings of different sounds to wild animals across various ecosystems. Lions roaring, dogs barking, gunshots, and human voices speaking calmly, just people talking, ordinary conversation. The result was striking. Animals fled from the sound of human voices at twice the rate they fled from lions, twice. The apex predator of the African savanna, an animal that has shaped prey behavior for millions of years, triggered less panic than a person having a quiet chat in the bush. Think about what that means. Your voice, at a normal conversational volume, is scarier to a wild animal than a lion's roar. This isn't because animals are confused or irrational. It's because they have been paying attention for a very, very long time. Go back far enough, and your ancestors were not the most dangerous thing in the forest. They were prey, small, slow, without claws or venom or armor. Early hominids were hunted by giant hyenas, saber-toothed cats, enormous eagles that snatched children from the ground. For millions of years, the ancestors of modern humans were near the bottom of the food chain, something to be eaten, not feared. But then something changed. About 300,000 years ago, Homo sapiens began to emerge with a brain capable of coordination at a scale no other animal could match. Not just cooperation between two individuals, but group coordination, symbolic communication, long-range planning. Your ancestors began to hunt in organized groups, using strategies no predator had ever used before. They spread traps across miles. They chased prey to exhaustion over days. They communicated across distances using calls and signals that no other species could decode. And they used fire. The moment humans controlled fire, the relationship between your species and every other species on the planet began to shift. Fire meant that humans could survive the night when every other predator owned the dark. It meant they could harden spear tips, signal across distances, and hold ground against animals 10 times their size. Within tens of thousands of years, humans had colonized every continent on Earth except Antarctica. And in every ecosystem they entered, megafauna began to disappear. Anthropologist Paul Martin called it the blitzkrieg hypothesis, the idea that waves of human migration arriving in new ecosystems caused mass extinction events wherever they went. The woolly mammoth, the giant ground sloth, the short-faced bear, the cave lion, all gone within a geologically brief window after humans arrived in their territory. North America lost over 70% of its large mammal species within a few thousand years of human arrival. Australia lost 90% of its megafauna. These extinctions correlate with uncomfortable precision to the timing of human expansion. The animals that survived were the ones that learned to avoid you. This is the critical piece. The fear you see in animals today is not random. It is the inherited memory of a species-level reckoning. The animals whose ancestors did not run from humans are gone. The animals whose ancestors were just scared enough, just cautious enough, just alert enough, are the ones who made it. Their descendants are the deer that vanishes before you raise your hand. The crow that calculates your safe approach distance to the meter. The fox that smells you before you see it and is already elsewhere. Their fear is the fossil record of your violence. Ecologist Joel Berger spent years studying the behavior of large mammals in areas with different levels of human contact. His work, documented in his book, The Better to Eat You With, found something remarkable. Animals in regions with no recent human presence, places where humans had been absent for generations, had essentially lost their fear response to human smells and sounds. They didn't run. They didn't freeze. They simply stood and stared, the way a dog might look at a stranger, curious rather than terrified. This is known as naive prey behavior. And it is precisely what made them vulnerable everywhere humans arrived. The dodo bird of Mauritius did not run when Dutch sailors stepped onto the island in the late 1600s. It had evolved in the complete absence of mammalian predators and had no framework for understanding what a human was. It waddled toward them. Within a century, it was extinct. The same pattern appeared across the Pacific Islands, across Madagascar, across every isolated ecosystem that had developed without the presence of human hunters. The animals that survived long enough to pass their fear down were the ones who encountered humans and survived to reproduce. The ones who approached with curiosity did not. What you are witnessing in the wild, that sudden bolt of a rabbit, that measured retreat of a wolf, that absolute stillness of a heron waiting until you pass, is the result of a brutal genetic filter that ran for hundreds of thousands of years. The ones who were afraid enough are alive. The ones who weren't are not. But here is where it becomes truly strange. This fear is not fixed. It is calibrated. It is intelligent. Researchers studying coyotes in urban environments have found that city coyotes have developed a precise internal map of human behavior. They know the difference between a person walking with purpose, going somewhere, not paying attention, and a person who has slowed down and is looking at them. They track eye contact. They distinguish between someone with a dog on a leash and someone without one. They have learned, across generations of urban living, that the rules of human danger are specific and predictable, and they have adapted to navigate those rules with extraordinary precision. Studies on crows, particularly by John Marsluff at the University of Washington, showed that crows can recognize individual human faces, hold grudges against specific people who have threatened them, and pass those grudges to their offspring. If you trap a crow, band it, and release it, not only will that individual crow warn others when it sees your face, crows who were never part of the original encounter will also respond to your face with alarm calls, having learned from the first crow's behavior. They remember you individually, and they tell their children. This is not simple fear. This is something closer to a cultural transmission of threat knowledge. The animals around you are not just afraid of humans in the abstract. They are building and sharing detailed models of human behavior, human unpredictability, and human danger, and passing those models across generations. So what does this tell you about your own species? It tells you that you are, by any ecological measure, one of the most dangerous organisms that has ever existed on this planet, not because of your size or your speed or your venom, but because of your coordination, your planning, your ability to reshape environments on a scale that no other species can match or adapt to quickly enough. The fear in an animal's eyes when it sees you is data. It is millions of years of accumulated information about what your species does. And yet, There is another layer to this story that almost nobody talks about. Animals that have been raised around humans, domesticated species, hand-reared wildlife, urban animals across multiple generations show a measurable reduction in cortisol response to human presence. The fear does not disappear entirely, but it recedes to something manageable. A baseline wariness rather than a full flight response. This is what makes wildlife rehabilitation possible. This is why a wolf pup, raised from birth among humans, behaves so differently from a wild wolf. This is why elephants in sanctuaries, after years of consistent, calm human contact, eventually allow their handlers to touch them. The fear is learned, and it can be partially unlearned, which means that what animals are responding to is not something fixed and inevitable about humans. It is the pattern of behavior your species has demonstrated across time. The fear is a reflection of a track record. That crow calculating your safe approach distance. It has access to thousands of generations of data about what humans do when they get close. Its caution is rational. Its model of you is accurate based on everything it has inherited. Tonight, if you walk into a park at dusk and watch a fox slip behind a tree the moment it notices you, you might feel a small sting of something, a wish that it would stay, that it would come closer, that it would look at you without that calculating readiness to flee. That feeling is worth sitting with. Because that distance between you and the fox is not just geography, it is history. It is the accumulated record of every encounter between your species and theirs, compressed into the space of a glance and a decision to run. The fox doesn't know you, but it knows what you are. And somewhere in the back of your own ancient brain, the part that is still listening to the forest go quiet when you enter it, you know it too.